Fratelli Tutti. We are at paragraph 130, are we not?
Yes.
Right.
This implies taking certain indispensable steps, especially in response to those who are fleeing grave humanitarian crises. As examples, we may cite increasing and simplifying the granting of visas, adopting programs of individual and community sponsorship, opening humanitarian corridors for the most vulnerable refugees, providing suitable and dignified housing, guaranteeing personal security and access to basic services, ensuring adequate consular assistance, and the right to retain personal identity documents, equitable access to the justice system, the possibility of opening bank accounts, and the guarantee of the minimum needed to survive, freedom of movement, and the possibility of employment, protecting minors and ensuring their regular access to education, providing for programs of temporary guardianship or shelter, guaranteeing religious freedom, promoting integration into society, supporting the reuniting of families, and preparing local communities for the process of integration. What a great list.
There's a lot in that paragraph. Whew.
Yeah. I mean, what if we really were intentional about providing all of that for people who came to our borders seeking refuge? What if we were intentional about providing all of that for people who live within our borders? Any more thoughts on that?
I guess my curiosity lies with who should provide these kinds of services and at what level can these realistically survive as programs for families who come here, families that are here, and ideas around that, which I don't have any ideas as to who and how, but I guess I throw that out there just in if anyone has input on that.
I was thinking about basic social services, family social services. Don't they cover any of these for these types of families?
But
Well,
we,
go ahead.
the we means us. And for Lutheran social services, without the support of Gloria Day or others, they couldn't provide those services. So
I'm talking about the county social services.
okay. Well, it goes back to how much of this is our responsibility and what do we need to do in order to ensure all of these wonderful things for people, especially the ones that aren't getting it.
It strikes me that the problem we have right now is that providing all of this is done when it's done in a real piecemeal way. We have Lutheran Refugee and Immigration Services, which is a wonderful organization and does a tremendous amount of work. But that's one organization and they're scattered. We have county services in various places throughout the country, but that is by no means any kind of an even distribution system. It varies tremendously from county to county, even within a single state. State budgets are different from state to state. National systems are not distributed evenly. There is no coordinated effort anywhere. Different churches provide different levels of assistance, but that also varies from place to place and church to church, non-government organizations. So if you're trying to coordinate some kind of aid for people, you end up spending most of your time going from agency to agency, trying to put the package together that will take care of people, instead of having one central clearinghouse where all of this could be taken care of, which is where it seems to me that the most logical place for this to be taken care of would be the federal government. Because it's the federal government that would have the coordination to bring all the pieces together. And yes, it could be administered through states and counties, but with the guidelines and the structure and the central funding to say, here's what it has to look like. These are the basic minimum requirements. Here's what has to be provided. Here's the money to do it. Now here, you people do it. I just, you know, when immigrants originally came to this country, the immigrants who came before them often put together aid societies that helped provide a lot of these things. A lot of that structure is not there for the people who are coming now. And a lot of the conditions that drove people to this country in the past are very different from the conditions that are driving people here now.
Yes.
So, you know, these are all things we have to consider, but we do have to consider two things, I think. First, we have to remember that these people also are our brothers and sisters in humanity and in Christ. And then secondly, we have to consider that we have a humanitarian responsibility to them. We can't just let them fall through the cracks, because they will try to find some way to survive. And that might mean graft and selling drugs and corruption and whatever else they may feel they need to do to survive. We create a lot of our own problems because we don't provide for ways for people to survive and take care of themselves at the outset. Anyway, I have preached.
I agree with that, and it strikes me that that I've been thinking about this a lot, that actually, you know, the question about who should do this, well, basically in our country, that is us. If we, through our government, because we fund the government, if we do this through our government, that would be an appropriate, you know, means by which to do that. But that would be us doing it if we were making sure that that's what was happening with the taxpayer funds.
I want to point out one thing that I think is a little that we learned in our small group, and it has to do with kind of the way that people that come to our country are helped. And I think maybe, and I could be wrong, but I divide these groups into two really broad categories. And the first category would be those people that have asked to come to this country and have been granted visas in order to come, and eventually will be will become naturalized. And would be through our immigration program that we've established. And what I learned in our small group is that the federal government is quite active in helping to get those people set up and to provide a safety net for them. So that's one group. And by the way, anyone that's in our small group that thinks I've mischaracterized that, please jump in. But then the other group is the refugees, the people that come to our country for humanitarian reasons. I'm thinking right now, there's all sorts of examples, but one example would be certainly the people that came from Vietnam after the war was finished, and we accepted so many war refugees from Vietnam. And they came and they just, came to us. And so those kinds of refugees, I'm not sure that we are set up to handle them. And I think maybe this paragraph 130 addresses that the inadequacy of dealing with that particular group that just comes to our shores as refugees. And that can be a fairly large number.
Right.
Right. And I'm going to butt in because you can't see me. Phil, I think you characterized what we learned very accurately. The ones seeking asylum here that go through our national or federal form of vetting and filling out the legal forms, and it can take 5 years, and they're stuck in refugee camps all over the world going through that process. There's also the other thing I think we should think about is we do have, like Karen was saying, LSS, there's county and city services, Goodwill, Salvation Army. There's all kinds of little, some of them not so little, but different forms of services that we have. But as Pastor says, we aren't coordinating them. If we could coordinate all those services, somehow get an oversight committee or whatever organization to help do that, so they know maybe Salvation Army and Goodwill will help provide jobs. I'm losing my voice. And like Assistance League provides free dental care, and there's also a dental clinic and a children's clinic for parts of healthcare. If somebody, if they could somehow coordinate or have an overseer that kind of will assign certain tasks maybe to these multiple groups instead of each group trying to handle all of them. I mean, one group will be trying to provide housing and getting them their IDs and getting them counselors, instead of maybe doing that if they could coordinate that. And I think LSS has been trying to do that with some of the other agencies I don't know if you and Karen, Phil, can talk more about that, but I know when we went to that little walkthrough when they were sort of redirecting Lutheran social services to more of the homeless population, they kind of reviewed that with us and how they were trying to coordinate with other Long Beach agencies. But still, it's just an enormous task, and they were doing that with a federal grant. So we're trying, I think, but we don't think we've quite hit on the right sequence or the right format or the right system to do it.
Stephanie, I have a question for you, and maybe it's a more general question, but specifically to the Assistance League. Did the Assistance League register in some way? And register, it's kind of quote unquote register with the city of Long Beach to let whichever group or department in the city is responsible for, taking care of people that need housing and folks that have come into the city. Is there Is there a department in Long Beach that acts as like a clearinghouse and that they would know that, oh, the Assistance League will be able to do, provide free dental care for you?
And free or partial, maybe some, and
But just in general.
some, yeah, in general, and clothing for school and backpacks, that kind of stuff. They are registered with the city. The city knows they exist because we sometimes get money from the city,
Okay.
but mostly it's private donors or corporations that donate money. And then
Well,
and then we raise our own.
Well, my question more is in terms of the distribution of information. In other words, if I went to a particular department in Long Beach and said, I really need help, and they say, okay, if you need help with dental care, contact the Assistance League. If you need help with housing, then contact LSS. That's kind of where I'm going, whether there's any place in the city of Long Beach that functions as a clearinghouse that coordinates or makes available to these folks.
I don't know that.
There's something called, I want to say it, the center or the, Grand Central or something like that. And actually LSS has that function under its grants. And that's what all those people are sitting at the various computers are laid out. They're actually laid out into groups of housing and income and education and so on. And when people come through there, they're referred to those various areas as need be. And so anyway, it hasn't always been like that, but in the last probably 5 years, I think that's what they've really been working towards, because they find out that indeed it's not a single problem, and so they are routing that around.
Yeah, go ahead.
There must be some place where this information is put together, because we have those pamphlets that Marilyn pushes regularly that list all the places and all the people and all the services that are available. So
Margie, I just grabbed those. I have a whole bunch of them too, because we usually give them out to people that are homeless, and it does have all these agencies: Emergency Social Services, Red Cross, Catholic Charities, Christian Outreach and Action, Disabled Resource Center, Long Beach Rescue Mission, Long Beach Senior Center, Lutheran Social Services Community Center, Mental Health, The Village, Salvation Army. It has 23 different organizations that they can go to for medical and mental health services, employment services, substance abuse services, public agencies, and medical and mental health services. Having trouble with my tongue this morning. And interesting, Assistance League is not listed, but I don't think we're set up to deal with children that have a residence or are homeless. We're not really set up for adults. Our whole focus, since it was an organization started by school teachers, their focus is on children. So they have, it's mostly for children, and they have to apply for like dental help. The rest of them, we work through the school system, because there's a system that they refer clients to us. Somebody that needs
a system in place in various places. They just have to find the right one. Okay.
Yeah, but it would, it still seems like Pastor's right. If somebody could, I don't know who oversees this whole thing, the person that actually goes out and contacts people. I mean, where do you, I don't know.
Of course, you're talking about a home. It's primarily oriented towards homelessness.
Yes.
And what we've been talking about is it's primarily oriented at asylum seekers.
Yeah. There's a multi-service center and the Villages at Cabrillo. It's a residential community established to break the cycle of homelessness.
It's been around a long time.
Yeah.
It occurs to me that maybe homeless people sometimes feel like refugees in their own homeland.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
I think that particular brochure, those are the ones we put in the homeless kits or the hygiene kits.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's for LA County, and I'm not aware of one that's available for Orange County. I'm sure there must be a brochure that's similar, but The one, because remember we made those little kits where we have socks and a bottle of water and
Yes.
we just carry in our car, which I'm out of. But it's, if we meet Orange County people, it doesn't apply to them unless they go over the border.
I would suggest start looking in Santa Ana.
Yeah, okay, I should do that.
Probably in two or three languages too. in
Yeah.
Orange County.
Garden Grove would probably have some things too.
Yeah. Okay.
It's interesting how different goes back to different communities, different cities, different states, different organizations. You know, if it all rolled up into one group, wouldn't that just constrict creativity? I mean, some organizations, some groups, and I'm thinking even Gloria Day, we come up with some creative ways to fulfill needs. But if we just sent a check, it might not spur the same creativity or even the same amount of giving.
I keep going back to when Phil was talking about when the Vietnam refugees came here. And we knew they were all coming, and we knew that we had a responsibility in that because of the Vietnam War. And there was a national coordinated effort.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Where we would say to whole families who were coming over, okay, you are going to live in this city.
Mm-hmm.
And here, we've got you a job. And here, you kids are going to go to this school. I mean, it just, we worked it all out for them.
Yeah. And if you need a small business loan to start a company, you know, a small eatery or something, I think those kinds of things, low interest loans were available to them.
Right.
Well, you know, the Lutheran organization in Minneapolis did the same thing for refugees from Somalia.
Right.
And in Minneapolis, if you go into this area, they said, here's where you're going to live. Here's where you're going to go to school. And they set up a whole community for people from refugees from Somalia.
And at Christ Lutheran Church, we adopted 2 Vietnamese families. I remember one of them was the Tran family. And, you know, it's like we all worked to help them get assimilated at school and to help them get assimilated into the community and to make sure they had friends, you know, that they knew people. It was part of the deal.
Yeah.
The
So church organizations, individual churches helped, which is a great way to distribute, you know, the effort and the workforce to help those people through volunteers.
Yeah.
The experiment in Minneapolis did not work well.
Mm-hmm. What happened?
That particular community where they had them all come has become quite blighted and a lot of crime and it's an area that people just now have to avoid.
Oh, it's too bad.
It really is. The housing is in terrible condition. It's I don't know if the support ran out, if they got disenchanted, I don't know. But that particular area of Minneapolis has really deteriorated into almost a ghetto-like atmosphere.
Well, that's an interesting thing to revisit. How did it work in areas where they were spread out throughout the community versus where they were ghettoized?
Right. And they were impacted into one, but it's not unlike the Norwegians. They all moved into one, you know, Italians, they
Germans
come to this country.
Irish.
Yeah, they all do.
Yeah.
Yeah, when my son-in-law's family came over from Czech Republic, they stayed in kind of a Czech enclave that was located in Glendale. They had people there that sponsored them and helped them find their way. So
sponsorship, that's an interesting thought too, Margie.
That's the word that was on the documentation they needed when you're going somewhere like when they went from Quebec to California across the border, they had to have the name and address of some people that would sponsor them. In other words, help them. They had a safe haven to go to, kind of thing, and they could prove that. So that's how. And I'm sure my folks did too. I was too young to know. They didn't want me. My folks didn't tell me everything. So I don't know, but I'm sure we did, because my mom had a brother living here in Long Beach, and that's why we headed here.
It still exists, because Phil and I sponsored a family from the Philippines. When parts of their family were coming here, they had to have a sponsor and someone that would make sure, and so we sponsored members of that family so that they could come over, and even though they had their visas, they had all the necessary things, they just had to have a sponsor.
Yeah.
So that still exists.
Yes.
Shall we see if we can get through 2 paragraphs today?
Yeah.
But on the lighter side, I can't resist saying that Jimmy Buffett wrote a song about that. It's called "Everybody Has a Cousin in Miami."
Oh,
That's good.
I would just, one last thing on paragraph 130, keep that marked, because it's a really good reference in terms of the basic requirements of what's needed to experience a full life within a culture.
Mm.
You know, those are the basic minimum ingredients.
Oh dear, I think 131 goes into homelessness.
Well, there we are then.
It's a short one.
For those who are not recent arrivals and already participate in the fabric of society, it is important to apply the concept of citizenship, which is based on the equality of rights and duties under which all enjoy justice. It is therefore crucial to establish in our societies the concept of full citizenship and to reject the discriminatory use of the term minorities, which engenders feelings of isolation and inferiority. Its misuse paves the way for hostility and discourse. It undoes any successes and takes away the religious and civil rights of some citizens who are thus discriminated against.
I restate my thought there. It is more for social justice.
Interesting idea that we should get rid of the term minorities.
Mm-hmm.
Reject the discriminatory use of the term minorities.
Why do we use it anyway?
Probably because you use the word majority.
But if you use that word, it implies that there are those who are not.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder how it got started, is what I'm thinking about.
And how do you get rid of it?
People are asked all the time, are you white? Are you Hispanic? Are you Black? And that's used all the time for all kinds of different reasons in order to promote fairness and equality. And sorry about that. And so it reminds me of my grandson, Patrick, because I said to him, Pat, I said, if you were applying for a home loan and you had to check a box, what would you check? Or if you were applying for something, what would you check? Would you check white? Would you check Black? And he said, basically, it depends on who's asking.
Yeah, I figured that. Yeah.
And so, he said, in some instances, if I check Black, I have more opportunity. And if I check white, they're not going to believe me anyway. So, and that's a real interesting dilemma. What do you check?
Mixed. Do they have a mixed race or
Nope.
mixed
Yeah,
ethnicity?
No, there's no.
Other.
It's it's if you look on most lending instruments, there's are you Asian, are you blah blah blah, but a combination or two checks doesn't work.
Prefer not to answer.
But if you choose that, the person on the other side of the phone or the desk needs to select it for you. It does not go unanswered, just so you know. They'll make an assumption. Fair or not?
But therein lies the controversy of by tracking those things, do we discriminate? And is it better to know kind of where we are, or is it better to, not pay attention to it?
Yeah. I think about some of our quote, end quote, goals right now in the ELCA and how we are charged with increasing minority participation, increasing our diversity. This is the language we use, which is great. We do want to be more diverse. It ends up getting stated all the time as if we have certain targeted goals of particular kinds of people that we're looking to recruit. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. As opposed to making our church more inviting to all kinds of people. I don't know what the answer is. Well, no, I don't. Even when they take such essential steps, states are not able on their own to implement adequate solutions, since the consequences of the decisions made by each inevitably have repercussions on the entire international community. As a result, our response can only be the fruit of common effort to develop a form of global governance with regard to movements of migration. Thus, there is a need for midterm and long-term planning, which is not limited to emergency responses. Such planning should include effective assistance for integrating migrants in their receiving countries, while also promoting the development of their countries of origin through policies inspired by solidarity, yet not linking assistance to ideological strategies and practices alien or contrary to the cultures of the peoples being assisted. Oh, wow.
I don't know if you can do that because the other country may not want your interference.
Well, that's
what that last sentence is saying.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I know there are some instances in which we've sort of seen this being attempted. In Mexico, a lot of like Ford, I think Ford opened a manufacturing plant in Mexico, and I think they have another one in South America, which they've since closed. But in attempting to, that's providing jobs for the people there. So hopefully if they have jobs in their own country, someplace where they're comfortable, someplace they may not want to leave if they don't have to, it would be nice to be able to provide them with income and a job. On the other hand, then people in the United States are unhappy because those jobs leave our country and go somewhere else. this gets so complex. It seems like it shouldn't be that complex, but I think it is.
Well, that's an interesting dynamic that you raised there, Steph. I was thinking about the fact that even within a single country, you're going to have clashes of different cultures.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you organize an international policy to cover migration when sometimes they've got people migrating simply because they can't stand the system they're living under? I mean, it's an internal culture clash that's causing them to migrate.
Right.
Myanmar is an example.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very, very good and contemporary one.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming to look at and try to think of a solution. I'm sure there are people or groups of people that could come up with something, but this is tough.
That's the State Department's job.
Yeah.
Well, the long and the short of it is that are the dynamics of power.
Boy,
Power over versus power with.
Yeah.
And power
Well
through.
said. Well said.
And there, we've just got too many countries in the world where people are seeking to have power over others instead of exercising power with and through. And as long as that's the case, we're going to have trouble. Of course, that's part of being human. Okay. The arrival of those who are different, coming from other ways of life and cultures, can be a gift. For the stories of migrants are always stories of an encounter between individuals and between cultures. For the communities and societies to which they come, migrants bring an opportunity for enrichment and the integral human development of all. For this reason, I especially urge young people not to play into the hands of those who would set them against other young people, newly arrived in their countries, and who would encourage them to view the latter as a threat and not possessed of all the same inalienable dignity as every other human being. Okay.
Speaks
Good.
for James.
Who else would like to read?
I'll read. Indeed, when we open our hearts to those who are different, this enables them, while continuing to be themselves, to develop in new ways. The different cultures that have flourished over the centuries need to be preserved, lest our world be impoverished. At the same time, those cultures should be encouraged to be open to new experiences through their encounter with other realities. For the risk of succumbing to cultural sclerosis, which means hardening, is always present. That is why we need to communicate with each other, to discover the gifts of each person, to promote that which unites us, and to regard our differences as an opportunity to grow in mutual respect. Patience and trust are called for in such dialogue, permitting individuals, families, and communities to hand on the values of their own culture and welcome the good that comes from others' experiences. The first thing I thought of when I read this was Mexican food.
Where would we be without the taco?
I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't know what Mexican food was till I moved down here, and I'd been here for a while. So, and I love it. It's one of my favorite foods to eat.
I was thinking that the two greatest areas we have to teach us about other cultures and open us to other cultures are cuisine and music.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Yes.
I was thinking about how much richer my life has been since I discovered music of different cultures.
Yeah.
and how much I love like African music, Irish music, Latin American music. It's such a rich variety. And then the foods, as you said, Margie.
Yeah.
So I would like to make a comment. I'm not sure how other people are feeling, but I'm beginning to become very discouraged reading through these paragraphs. And I'm becoming discouraged because I see what Pope Francis is saying, and I see his aspirations for how we treat people that are coming to different cultures. But on the other hand, I also see what's happening around the world. And I'm thinking of, for example, Syria or North Africa, where those cultures are imploding and refugees are coming at such a high number, and they're coming to seek a better life and overwhelming the societies that they're coming to. And they're leaving their own cultures because there's just no opportunity there. And so somehow I'm not able to reconcile what Pope Francis is saying with regards to our treating immigrants with our better nature and the reality of what we're dealing with in terms of the flow of migrants all over the world. And what little reading I've done on this, what I understand is that there's more migration occurring in these last, say, 20 or 30 years than has occurred in the history of mankind. And so I'm really having a hard time embracing what Pope Francis is saying because of that.
Embracing it in what regard, Phil?
Believing that it's that it's a reality, believing that that it's actionable, and for all of us to embrace. You know, forgive me for saying this, but embracing and accepting all with open arms. Where's the problem? Is the problem in their own countries that they're not able to have a life that they want and are forced to leave? And
well, I think
Pope Francis is saying we should embrace everybody, but I think he's missing another point, and that is that these countries that they're coming from, he needs to take them to task for not providing the support that their own citizens need.
I think he speaks to that, though.
Well, he's not speaking to it in the way that I would. Okay, I understand that, Richard. Let me just say, in my sense is that I'd like to hear more of that rather than what he's saying. I think there needs to be. He needs to devote a paragraph or a couple or a few to that.
I think he will.
Okay. I can't wait.
No, I hear you, Phil, and I sympathize. I think you stated it. It's the reality we face, that we're facing greater migration than we ever have. And I think he's essentially saying it's reached a point where we either embrace it, but resisting it isn't going to do anything but cause more tension and more grief, especially the kind of resistance we've been seeing. So let's figure out ways to embrace it that are productive. He will get to the point where he will talk about addressing the causes. And that really does have to be addressed.
Yeah, it does. Especially when mostly what we see on the news is just countries being overrun. I mean, they can't process the number of people that are coming to their shores. I mean, it's just, it's
Yeah.
overwhelming. It's really overwhelming to a lot of places who've tried. They're trying, but, and then these little camps get set up that are miserable conditions for people that have come just because the countries can't, the states can't handle it.
I just, it seems so unimaginable when life is so unlivable where you live in your home country that you have to leave it to survive. And then the trek itself is barely survivable. And then you arrive at a place that's barely survivable. And you finally think you're going to find a new country, and the way you're treated there is barely survivable. I mean, what
I know. How do these people hold on to hope?
how do they hold on to life?
Yeah.
Didn't he say at some point back earlier, he said something about the concept that countries needed to be responsible to make sure that their people's basic needs were met like this, so that the reason for migration would be only, like a matter of preference, or I can't remember quite how I heard that, but I heard that he was saying that he, I mean, like what Phil was saying, I think he addressed that, and Richard said that, I think too, that that was part of the problem that he was addressing at that point, and saying that, if we do this for people in the extraordinary circumstances of where their countries are abusing them, that's a main point. But that also, if all countries were doing this, then that would be the exception rather than the rule. I think I got that at some point. I don't know.
He did briefly address it earlier on. Yeah, Ellen. He will say more about it in a bit.
Okay.
We're only on page 33. 34. Anyway, but it's an enormous problem. And Phil, I share sometimes your frustration and your hopelessness. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by this. But we are called to be people of hope. Faith, hope, and love, these three abide. Some days it's not so easy, especially when it's foggy.
Yes, yes.
I need to
Pastor.
sign off. I have somebody coming to do some work at my house, so.
Okay. Thank you, Margie.
Pastor, what I think you had just finished saying is important to remember, because it's easy to go down that rabbit hole of negativity, and it's important to
How do I get out of this?
maintain higher thoughts. Remind ourselves of that.
Yes, and it's important to remember that you don't have to solve the problem. You need to be aware of it, and you need to do what you can, and you need to meet one person at a time.
The thought just came to me. Remember, I'd mentioned a story about being in Kenya and the small children picking up the stones. And it comes to me, whether it's a small stone or a big stone, pick up a stone.
Yeah, blessed by your own story. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh, that's such a great story, Phil.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's 5 till. Shall we call it a morning?
Pastor, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
May we end in prayer?
Yeah, we forgot to start with prayer. So the Lord be with you.
And also with
Also with
So
you.
with you.
Thank you, Liz. Gracious and loving God, help us remember that you are a gracious and loving God and that we are all sisters and brothers in humanity, that we are all your children, that you love every last one of us. When the problems of this world seem overwhelming, help us remember that while they are our responsibility, they are not our responsibility alone, but together. And that together, they are solvable with your help and by the power of your Spirit, for the sake of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.